Happy Friday morning. Welcome into the final edition of Morning Jocks for the week. I'm Conrad Van Order alongside John Saber, Damian Mitchell, taking himself a long weekend. So appreciate Saber joining me here this morning in what is a day to get you set for a fantastic weekend of SEC hoops. It's going to be absolutely jam-packed. Essentially from 11 a.m. tomorrow all through the late hours of the night. It's going to be a great day tomorrow. Can't wait to see both Alabama and Auburn in action. We have a top 10 matchup with Tennessee and Florida to kick things off. We have 3 top 25 matchups in the SEC tomorrow, as well as many other great matchups. Obviously, the big storyline, if you haven't heard, Coach Cal will be returning to Rupp Arena for the first time as the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. So a lot of great storylines, a lot of great stuff to get to and get you set for over the weekend. But it is Final Score Friday, just like we do in college football season. Now that we're turning the page to college basketball and going full force here, what are you expecting this weekend from both Alabama and Auburn? Are there other games in the SEC that you're really interested in? Are there any upsets that you're expecting to see come down the pipe this weekend? Because as we've seen, every game in the SEC, regardless of who the opponent is, 1 through 16, ask Florida, ask Auburn about playing a winless South Carolina team. Even that is no easy match, but you got some opportunities there. You got Texas A&M traveling on the road to take on South Carolina. You got Texas and LSU. Somebody's going to have to win that game. Vanderbilt, a top 25 team, looking to remain that way against Oklahoma. It's just a fantastic slate coming up, and we want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. Text in. Maybe you have final score predictions for Alabama and Auburn. Maybe you have upset picks, things you're excited to watch over the weekend here in the SEC. We want to hear from you. See what you're looking forward to this weekend. But starting with a look at the slate, again, as I mentioned, at 11 a.m. tomorrow on ESPN, you're going to have number 5 Florida taking on number 8 Tennessee. And if you haven't been following along here for the last week or so, Tennessee now dealing with a couple of some back-to-back losses. You had the loss, of course, to Vanderbilt over the weekend in spectacular fashion. They give up 76 points to Vanderbilt, the most points they've given up all season long. Then they turn around and go and have to host a very good, very solid Kentucky team. They give up 78 points to the Wildcats, which was then the most points that they've given up. So now back-to-back losses for Tennessee, where they've given up a season high in scoring to their opponents. They now find themselves at 4-4 here in SEC play. So this is going to be a massive game for them, taking on a Florida Gators squad that's currently tied right now for 3rd in the SEC with, lo and behold, the Missouri Tigers. There with 5-2 mark in SEC play. Florida 18-2 overall, matching their best record through 20 games in program history. They've been excellent so far this year. But for Tennessee, this is one, if you want to have any hope of really staying in that hunt for a regular season championship here in the SEC, you're going to have to get this one, because if you fall to 4-5 in the conference, it feels like that is just going to be way, way too far out of reach for you to make a comeback.
That's the one good thing about basketball, especially compared to college football, is that, although it's a little bit different, more so now, but with football, you lose a game and basically everything was kind of done. Like your seasons, at least in terms of the regular season, it used to be, kind of lost. You couldn't do much, and now there's a little bit more leeway. But the good thing about Tennessee basketball is that while, yes, you don't want to lose these games, there are good losses to have now in not only in college football, really kind of, but especially in college basketball. Like Auburn's one loss to Duke is going to be held up as a good thing. Yes, you lost the game, but look who it was to. And so Tennessee, yes, you absolutely want to win this game, but losing to a team like okay, you know what, like a team like this, like it's kind of okay now. That's after the fact. That's going to be for Sunday, should you lose it. Between now and tomorrow, yeah, it's all about winning that game, because, I mean, they were the number 1 team in the land at one point, and you've got to show that. I assume you're going to make the NCAA tournament. I don't think you're going to fall apart, but if you're good enough to be number 1, you should be good enough to make a deep tournament run, but you're going to have to get wins like this game. Okay, understandable, losing to Auburn. All right, fine, cool, get that. But this weekend's a game like this, that's a game we really kind of should win.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm right there with you. It's absolutely a game that you need to win. We all remember what happened the last time these teams played. Florida beat them by 30, so it didn't
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
go. It didn't exactly go Tennessee's way in that matchup. But I mean, you look at, all right, so you've lost to Kentucky, you've lost to Auburn, you've lost to Vanderbilt, so you've lost 3 of your last 4 games now. If you're Tennessee. You lost to Florida the first matchup, as we mentioned, by 30 points. You do have a win over Baylor in the non-con, but that's probably, I mean, that's kind of your marquee win right now. You have a win over Mississippi State, which we saw in action against Alabama. They're a very solid team. But, like you're saying, Saber, this was a team that was number 1 in the entire country at one point. So you would think that, yes, you're going to make the NCAA tournament, but the expectation for Tennessee is, can we now get to a Final Four? You've seen Auburn do it here in the last handful of years. You've now seen Alabama do it, and Tennessee's been a program that's always been thought of in high regard, at least here in recent memory, in terms of basketball. But for whatever reason, Rick Barnes just hasn't been able to get over that hump and get his team into a Final Four. And maybe this is a year that this Tennessee team can do it. But I feel like this is where we are with Tennessee every year, right? Is they always look good in the regular season. They play really well defensively. I don't know if Lanier's on the level of a Dalton Connect, but they typically have one guy that's kind of leading the scoring charge, and everybody else is, you got your Zakai Ziegler, who, I mean, he's been there forever now, but, really good at creating steals, really pesky defensively. That's just kind of Tennessee's MO, and that doesn't always translate the best to the NCAA tournament, I feel like, because as we know, guard play is very, very important in the NCAA tournament, and you never know when you're going to run up against a team that is just having a hot night offensively, and Tennessee's not really built for those kinds of contests. So, yeah, I mean, they've had opportunities here in the SEC, but they've fallen short against the big dogs so far. So Tennessee and Florida, a big opportunity there for Tennessee, and obviously for Florida as well, trying to stay up there in the top 5. You also have at 12 o'clock, so Florida, Tennessee tips at 11. Then at 12 on the SEC network, you're going to have Missouri and Mississippi State. That's a top 20 matchup there in conference play here in the SEC. Then following that at 1 o'clock, you're going to have Auburn going on the road, another top 25 matchup. So you start off all 3 of the first games tomorrow in SEC player, top 25 games, but Auburn on the road in Oxford, taking on Chris Beard in the Ole Miss Rebels. Ole Miss currently number 23. We remember what they were able to do coming into Coleman Coliseum a couple of weeks ago and knocking off Alabama. Had a really, really strong performance there. Had some struggles in the games following that. Had a little bit of a letdown. Tough losses to Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Missouri, but they did come back and managed to knock off Texas the other night. So Auburn taking on Ole Miss. At 2:30, you're going to have Vanderbilt traveling to Norman to take on Oklahoma. Then at 3 o'clock, you're going to have Georgia. They are traveling to Coleman Coliseum to take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Texas is going to LSU at 5 o'clock on the SEC network. Texas A&M on the road at South Carolina at 7:30. And then at 8 o'clock on ESPN, you're going to have the big storyline game of the weekend, of course, being Arkansas and Kentucky. So for you, Saber, looking at these games, Auburn going on the road, Alabama at home, it might be easy to say, okay, with Auburn going on the road, that's a more likely place for them to trip up. But do you look at either of these games as potentially dangerous? Are you expecting Alabama or Auburn to slip up this weekend, or just kind of business as usual?
It should be business as usual. I don't see either team, in theory, shouldn't have a stumble no matter whom they're facing, especially this weekend. It seemed more likely, given what they had done last weekend, that the games from a couple days ago would have been the likely stumbling block. And you kind of almost saw that with Alabama as they gave up they gave up the lead in the second half against Mississippi State, only to turn around and win by 4. And with Auburn, it would have made sense for them to have lost to LSU, one being on the road, but also taking on a Tennessee team that exhausts you. It's like playing Mississippi State, or it used to be like playing Mississippi State in football that were so physical that, yeah, you were typically going to beat them, but you were worn out for 6 days after that. And sometimes it took you the whole week to recover as opposed to just a couple of days. And so it would have made sense for Auburn, especially given the high of having Janai back, to have it be a trap game almost last week, or excuse me, a couple of days ago. But Auburn didn't do that, nor did Alabama. And I felt that to me is showing championship level of focus. So winning this weekend will also continue to show that, because, like, okay, you were up for the big games. What happened the weekend after that? Look at the Alabama football team. You were up for the big game against Georgia. The very next week, what happened? And so I don't think either basketball team will stumble like that, but if it does, that's going to tell me a lot about each squad.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how, I look at for Alabama, we remember when they lost to Ole Miss in that game, and then they followed it up with a trip to Rupp Arena and had a great performance, put up over 100 points on the road, knocked off Kentucky there in Rupp. And then this week now, you have kind of that uninspired performance against LSU over the weekend. Then you're kind of dragging a little bit here. You have a tough win against Mississippi State. But like you're saying, with the physicality of that, does that carry over to a Georgia game where, okay, you beat Mississippi State, but are you going to almost let Mississippi State beat you in the Georgia game because of how tired you are and how physical it was? And, like you were saying with Tennessee, I think you saw a little bit of that coming off of the Auburn game, where it looked a little bit like, man, we were just in a bloodbath 3 days ago. How are we supposed to get up and play another basketball game today? And you saw them look a little sluggish, and I think maybe that was part of that. So that's certainly going to be a challenge for Alabama, because this was a Georgia team. I mean, remember, this is a Georgia team that beat Kentucky earlier in the year. This is a Georgia team that about 2 weeks ago looked a lot different than they do right now. So certainly going to be a bit of a test there for the Crimson Tide. And then for Auburn going on the road to Ole Miss, it's at this point, I mean, I don't really know what to say. It feels like, you've had your opportunities, you've had your close calls early on in SEC play. You're going on the road. And so, minus what you did against LSU the other night, you look at the Texas game, that was a close call. The Georgia game was close. South Carolina was close. So maybe this is another one of those games for Auburn where it's not the prettiest. Maybe you're winning by 3, 4, what have you. But at the end of the day, a road win in the SEC over a top 25 team. I mean, this is going to be another quad 1 game for Auburn potentially to have on their resume, and they're just going to keep piling those up. So, but it's going to be a challenge, because
sounds a lot like the team in red in the Super Bowl, doesn't it?
Maybe a little bit.
Granted, now Auburn's looked better.
Yeah,
but being in all these close games, and to be fair, they found ways to win.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn hasn't looked as bad as Kansas City has, at least on offense. And yes, Kansas City has, again, gritted out wins multiple times this season, with the exception of the one. But it just feels a lot like Kansas City when we're saying how they Auburn, no matter what, finds a way to win a lot of these close games, winning by 2 against Tennessee, 2 against Georgia, 3 against South Carolina. I mean, 5 against Texas, not too long ago when they got into SEC play. The only one real true blowout was Missouri when they started. But then after that, they've all been kind of close games and squeaked out. So not to say that Auburn's going to win at all, but we've seen this kind of play out this way before.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, this is something that we'll bring up. Is Auburn continues to win, if they continue to win and win, at what point, again, not saying that you ever want to lose a game, but if you're an Auburn fan, and I'd be interested to know right now, if you're an Auburn fan, you want to chime in 205-834-9450. At what point do you get a little nervous of, okay, we've been winning too many games in a row? And again, I get it. Like, you want to win every single game, but at what point in the season, if Auburn keeps on this trajectory, where is it going to get to? All right, maybe we need to drop one here at the end of the season before we get into the SEC tournament, because you kind of want to remember what that is like. And I mean, look, if you can go undefeated the rest of the way and win a national championship, that's going to be one of the most spectacular seasons in the history of college hoops for anybody. But, I just wonder, at what point do you kind of start thinking about that of, I know it's not like Kentucky in, what was it, 2012, when they went undefeated all the way up until the national championship game, and then you lose that last game of the year in heartbreaking fashion. At what point do you start to go, maybe it just be, go ahead, get it out of the way.
Pick any other game to lose.
Exactly. Any other game outside of when we get to, obviously, the Alabama games. You don't want to lose those. And then when you get into the SEC tournament, NCAA tournament. So, but yeah, Auburn having a spectacular season so far. Absolutely no doubt about it. So a great day of college hoops coming your way tomorrow. Real quickly here, just a quick update. If you are wondering going into the weekend, a quick look at the net rankings and where SEC teams stand as of right now. So we have, we'll start at number 11 because Kentucky is number 11 in the net rankings. So they're number 11. You have Illinois, who's at 10. Illinois fell last night, though. They got upset by the Nebraska Cornhuskers there in overtime. But Illinois, number 10 in the net. Purdue, 9. Kansas, 8. Iowa State, 7. Alabama has moved up one spot to 6 this week. Florida at 5. Tennessee at number 4. Duke at number 3. Houston at number 2. And Auburn at number 1. So you've got right there, what is that? 5 of the top 11 teams in the net rankings coming from the SEC. 4 of the top 6 teams from the SEC. And the other 2 teams in there, Houston, who both Alabama and Auburn have beaten this year, and then Duke, the only team that has beaten Auburn this year. So a great collection of talent right up there at the top of the net rankings, and we will see how all of that shakes out here with a big weekend of SEC hoops coming up. So when we return here, there is some interesting, the Senior Bowl is going on down in Miami, and so a lot of people, this is when NFL mock draft season really starts to kind of amp up a little bit. But I saw a bit of a unique one yesterday, and it was an NFL mock draft. But what if every player in college football was eligible for this year's NFL draft? So there's no requirements, no 3-year eligibility requirements for college football. Every player that is on a roster right now, if they were eligible for the NFL draft, how different would this year's draft look? So I want to break that down, share that with you, and get some of your reaction when we return here on Morning Jocks. You're listening to Jocks 94.5. You're listening to Morning Jocks here on Jocks 94.5. Conrad and Saber here with you until 7 o'clock. Hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Saber, Cole, GMAC. I'll then be back from 10 to 2, three-man front. Pat Landrum and Molly, they're going to be out there at the World of Wheels today, taking in all the sights and sounds, so should be a good day there. And then, of course, Paul Feinbaum at 2 o'clock to head you into your weekend. Well, I said we were going to talk about NFL mock drafts, and there was a new NFL mock draft that came out yesterday, and it was kind of taking a look at all of college football. What if every player was available for this year's NFL draft? How much different would it look, at least in the top 10? So we'll get to that here in just a moment. But first, want to tell you that No Shoes Nation is headed to a new dimension here in 2025. Kenny Chesney is going to be live at the Sphere in Las Vegas for 12 shows this May and this June, and you could be there to take it all in. One lucky winner is going to score a trip for two to this once-in-a-lifetime concert experience. It includes round-trip airfare to Las Vegas, a two-night stay at the Virgin Hotel, entry into the VIP pool party, and 2 VIP tickets to see Kenny Chesney live at the Sphere. To enter, text the national keyword YOUNG to 95819. Again, text the keyword YOUNG, YOUNG, to 95819. Contest rules are available for you at jocksfm.com. Best of luck. All right. So heading into the world of NFL mock drafts. So this comes from Fox Sports. So what we're going to do, so I found a traditional NFL mock draft from Fox Sports, and I'm going to give you what their top 10 projections are for the actual NFL draft that is coming up in April. I will then share with you their mock draft for every player if they were available in college football, so we can compare and contrast and see some players that haven't really even taken that many snaps that would be projected to be very, very high draft picks if they were available to come out of the college ranks right now. So the normal mock draft, this is what Fox Sports expects to happen in April at this year's upcoming draft. So at number 1 overall, the Tennessee Titans, they have the Titans selecting Cam Ward, the quarterback from Miami. No surprise there.
Makes sense.
Number 2, you have the Cleveland Browns, another quarterback, Shadur Sanders from Colorado.
Sucks for him.
Yes, it does. All right, at number 3, the New York Giants. Now, if you listened on three-man front, we've talked about it this week. There was a mock draft that came out from, I think it was CBS maybe, where they had the Giants taking Jalen Milroe at number 3. Fox Sports does not have them taking Jalen Milroe. At number 3, the Giants are taking Abdul Carter, the edge defender from Penn State. Excellent player. At number 4, the New England Patriots, Will Campbell, the outstanding offensive lineman from LSU, there to protect Drake May. At number 5, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner from Colorado. At number 6, we have the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Will Johnson, outstanding defensive back from Michigan. At number 7, the New York Jets double up on Michigan, Mason Graham, the defensive lineman there for the Wolverines, at 7. At number 8, you have the Carolina Panthers selecting Tatoria McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. At number 9, Saber, your New Orleans Saints taking Mykel Williams, edge rusher from Georgia.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
And then at number 10, they have the Chicago Bears taking Kelvin Banks, the offensive lineman from Texas. So that is your top 10. That is what Fox is projecting as of right now for the actual NFL draft in April. Now, let's take a look at how different things look if every player was available. So keep in mind, you might have some freshmen on here, some guys that are going to be eligible for the draft next year. I think we all know that the greatest football player of all time, Jeremiah Smith, is going to show up on this list. So this is what Fox Sports put out there. If every college football player was available for the draft this year, how would the top 10 look? At number 1, the Tennessee Titans. Taking a quarterback. It is not Cam Ward. It is not Shadur Sanders. It is Arch Manning from Texas. So Fox Sports is telling you right now, if Arch Manning was eligible to enter the NFL draft, he would be the number 1 pick without, I guess he started a couple of games and when Quinn Ewers was hurt this year, but minimal experience. The NFL is ready for Arch Manning. He would be the number 1 overall pick.
I could see that.
Yes.
I don't know prospect-wise if he would be higher than Shador or Cam or whatever, but
someone will talk themselves into
correct,
the next Manning.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I think we all know how that's going to go. And look, I think Arch is going to have a great year at Texas this year. I'm very, very excited to see what he looks like with, a full offseason going into it, as he is going to be the starting quarterback. This is his team now, because the sky is the limit for him. We've seen him. I think we've already kind of, gotten rid of when he was coming out of high school was, okay, he comes from Louisiana. He's not playing the toughest competition in high school. Is he really that good? Is he only, a 5-star because his last name's Manning? I think we've moved past that. I think we've all come to understand he is a very talented player. There's a reason that he was a 5-star quarterback recruit coming out of high school. But now he's going to have to prove it for an entire season. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him in Texas next year. All right, so number 1, Tennessee Titans would take Arch Manning. Number 2, Cleveland Browns would take Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver from Ohio State.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. Kind of get to stay home in state.
Yeah.
That would be a big win for the Browns.
Yes. All right, and number 3, we have Travis Hunter.
Okay.
Yeah. The Heisman Trophy player from this year. All right, Heisman winner. Great player, two-way player. Okay, no problem with that. Number 4, we have Mason Graham, defensive lineman from Michigan.
Fits right in with what Vrabel wants to do.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, and number 5, Jacksonville Jaguars. We have Malachi Starks, defensive back from Georgia.
They'd be ecstatic if he fell to him.
Yes. Number 6, familiar name here, the Las Vegas Raiders. Once a great player here in the secondary for the University of Alabama, now no more, Caleb Downs, safety from Ohio State.
Pete Carroll restarting the Legion of Boom would get a very, very good core piece to start with.
Yes, absolutely. Number 7, New York Jets, edge rusher Abdul Carter.
Oof, feel bad for him.
Yeah, I feel bad for him too. But okay, so we've now had we're through picks 7. We've had 3 guys. We've had 3 guys that are actually eligible for the draft this year that are going into the draft that were projected in the top 10 that are staying here. Travis Hunter, Mason Graham, and Abdul Carter. All right, now at number 8, the Carolina Panthers.
And Malachi Starks.
Sorry, 4. Number 8, the Carolina Panthers would be selecting edge rusher Dylan Stewart.
They would run up to take
out of South Carolina.
Yes.
That dude is an absolute beast. Again, he is one of those guys similar to Caleb Downs last year at Alabama, or I guess 2 years ago now, where as a true freshman, you saw them and you went, yeah, I think you could probably go to the NFL right now and be just fine.
Pretty much, yeah. And this is also the second true freshman taken in the top 10.
Correct, after Jeremiah Smith. So Dylan Stewart will go to Carolina, kind of gets to stay a little bit close to home there, or close to South Carolina. All right, at number 9, then, we have your New Orleans Saints, Saber, and they would be selecting Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State.
That's a good get, especially if those edge rushers are off the table. That's probably more of what they need with a lot of their cap money invested into aging edge rushers. But to get someone that could be a hybrid of Taysom Hill and Gronk, you can't pass that up.
Yeah, he's going to have an excellent NFL career, I think. And then at number 10, to the Chicago Bears. The Bears will be selecting Ashton Jeanty, the running back from Boise State. So there you go. So you have, we have 6 players that are going to be draft eligible this year. Will likely all be first-round picks mocked there. But you have 4 players that, if they were available right now, Fox Sports thinks they would be drafted over some of the guys available this year here in the top 10, including the top 2 overall picks. Again, they think the Tennessee Titans would take Arch Manning out of Texas. Cleveland Browns would take Jeremiah Smith out of Ohio State. They have the Raiders taking Caleb Downs out of Ohio State at number 6. And then the Panthers at number 8 taking Dylan Stewart, the outstanding freshman edge rusher there from South Carolina. So just kind of interesting to see how different those 2 lists
What's
are.
also interesting is you keep going just a little bit more. 2 more freshmen are taken. At 11, you have Will Campbell from LSU going to San Francisco. Makes sense. Probably the best lineman, maybe, whatever, in the draft. At number 12, to the Dallas Cowboys, Ryan Williams from Alabama.
Yeah, that would
makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah, pairing him up outside with CeeDee Lamb.
But you get a flashy big name, which is exactly what Jerry Jones wants.
Yes. No, you're spot on with that.
Another freshman taken next, number 13, to the Miami Dolphins will be Colin Simmons, the stud linebacker for Texas.
Yes. He's very good.
And then I think there were only two other underclassmen that were taken. I think 17, TJ Parker, the edge rusher from Clemson. He would have gone to the Bengals at 17. And what was the other one? Oh, Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame, moving on to the Vikings at 24. So I think there were 8 total underclassmen in this projected. If everyone was available to go in the draft, 8 of the top 32, basically a quarter of it would have been underclassmen, which is very, very fascinating.
And if you remember, in I guess the first mock I gave you, which is what they projecting will actually happen in April with the draft, they had Cam Ward going number 1 overall. And the updated version that you're talking about, Saber, that we were just going over, they have Cam Ward going 21 overall. So they have him going 20 spots lower. If Arch Manning was available, they have Shedeur Sanders going 26th overall to the Los Angeles Rams. That would be interesting. But Cam Ward to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
In LA, wow.
Yeah, that would be something. Honestly, Cam Ward to the Steelers, I think that would be
a real good fit.
Yeah. That would be excellent.
Honestly, so would Shedeur with the Rams. I mean, let alone the whole get to be a star in LA. I mean, just being in a Sean McVay offense with Shedeur would be phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And then, so you mentioned it. So Ryan Williams would go 12 overall to the Cowboys in this projection. Let's see, no Auburn players listed here in their projection for the first round. The only other Alabama player they have listed would be Tyler Booker, the offensive lineman. They would have him projected to go 25th overall to the Texans, which is about where he is.
More or less, yeah.
Anyways, and the actual mock drafts for this year.
Yeah, I want to say he's the first guard taken.
Yes, I believe so, because the other guys you have are tackles and Banks and
not the first
Campbell.
lineman, probably the 5th, 6th, whatever overall lineman, but the best guard, first guard taken, definitely first round pick, but probably a back half of the first round.
Yes, absolutely.
Overall, no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so that's just kind of a look at how different things might look. Still, just kind of wild to me. And they're not including trades in here. Like, for example, in this scenario, Cam Ward's not falling to the 21st pick, right? Somebody's
Probably
going to
not,
is going to trade up, him or Shedeur. Maybe one of them does, but somebody's going to get antsy. They're going to draft up or trade up and try to draft a quarterback.
And honestly, knowing Jerry Jones, he would move heaven and earth, probably move up to
go
1.
get Shedeur,
to
get Arch Manning.
Keep Arch in Texas. Oh yeah.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, Saber. That's actually a perfect segue. Because former Heisman Trophy winner from the state of Alabama, one Cameron Newton, he was on First Take yesterday, and he had some very interesting comments about Arch Manning and the potential of him maybe playing for the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL and pairing him with a superstar head coach next year. He also had some interesting comments to say about whether he would trade his MVP award for the Super Bowl championship when the Panthers lost to the Denver Broncos. So let's dive into some of the things that Cam Newton said yesterday on ESPN. There are some wild takes out there and want to get your reaction to them. So we'll listen to what Cam Newton had to say about not only Arch Manning potentially going to the Cowboys, but if he would trade his MVP for a Super Bowl trophy. When we return, you're listening to Morning Jocks. 6:39 here on your Friday morning. You're listening to Morning Jocks here on Jocks 94.5. Conrad and Saber here with you, getting you set for a big weekend of SEC hoops. Again, if you missed it earlier in the show, we have a great slate of basketball coming up tomorrow, starting off at 11 a.m. on ESPN. You're going to get number 5 Florida traveling to Knoxville to take on number 8 Tennessee. You're also going to get at 12 o'clock on the SEC network, number 20 Missouri traveling to Starkville to take on 14 Mississippi State. Then at 1 o'clock on ESPN, and you can hear it right here on Jocks as well, Auburn will be traveling to Ole Miss to take on the Rebels there in a 1 versus 23 matchup. And then at 3 o'clock, you will have Georgia traveling to Coleman to take on the 4th-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. That game will be available for you on ESPN2. All right, well, we just spent some time looking at Fox Sports. They put out a mock draft for the 2025 NFL draft if every player in college football was currently draft eligible. Number 1 overall, you had Arch Manning. They projected the Tennessee Titans would take the Texas quarterback. And so Saber brought up an interesting point about the Cowboys and, you know, what would Jerry Jones do? What links would Jerry Jones go to try to secure Arch Manning and trade up for potentially the number 1 overall pick to select Arch Manning? And so I thought that was interesting because yesterday, Cam Newton, the former Heisman Trophy winner at Auburn, as well as NFL MVP with the Carolina Panthers, he was on First Take alongside Stephen A. Smith. And so he had some interesting comments about the Cowboys coaching situation and the hiring of Brian Schottenheimer. So let's listen in to what Cam Newton had to say yesterday on First Take with Stephen A. Smith.
Hear me out, J-Mac. Hear me out. I think they tanking for Arch. Make it make sense. Coach Schottenheimer has one and done written all over
I think they have to tank.
Okay, why do you want it done? You get the first pick of the draft, okay? Not only that, I'm going to go back into my Godfather bag and say, okay, Jerry Jones is a businessman, and he's going to get in this Don Corleone, you know what I'm saying, mentality, and he's going to give him a deal that he can't refuse. Who? Nick Saban. Go get Nick Saban as your head coach. Go draft Arch Manning as the number 1 pick. Man,
That's a lot. That's interesting. Well, first off, do I think Jerry Jones would absolutely love for a situation like that to unfold? Abso-freaking-lutely. 100%. He would be over the moon if that kind of a situation was a possibility. Do I think that Nick Saban in his early mid-70s wants to go back to the NFL and deal with the headache that is the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones? No, I don't. I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe Miss Terry wants him to go do it. That does not strike me as something that Coach Saban would want.
No, it would be fitting that another company man were to take the hit right before bringing in Nick Saban. But if all of that were to play out, it makes more sense that Nick Saban's mentor would be the one that's warming the seat for that Cowboys gig and Brian Schottenheimer, not Nick Saban.
Yes.
Makes more sense if it would be Bill Belichick.
I agree with that. And I have wondered, you know, with that whole Belichick situation, you know, if both parties, right, if the Cowboys knew how things were going to play out, if Bill knew, you know, some of the jobs that were going to come open, would that have been a job that he would have waited on and said, I'm not going to go to North Carolina. I'm going to wait. I want to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys? Because I'm with you. I think that would have been the best option for both sides. Granted, they would have had to give Belichick more control than they probably would have other guys, but I think Jerry might have been willing to do that for a guy that's won 6 Super Bowls. I will say this. I do think, depending on how this season goes for the Cowboys, I would not be surprised at all if they are enamored with Arch Manning and wanted to try to trade up and find a way to get him with the number 1 overall pick in the draft or wherever he ends up being slotted for next year if he does ultimately come out of college next year. The Nick Saban thing, I don't see that being a realistic possibility. It would be kind of ironic with all of the rumors we had, I don't know, a little over a decade ago about him leaving Alabama for Texas. If, in fact, he just retired from Alabama and didn't go to Texas, he went to the Dallas Cowboys instead. There would be some irony in that. But again, I don't know if that's what he's looking for at this point in his life, right? On top of the fact, I mean, would you realistically expect that he would be there? It's like the Pete Carroll situation, right? I think the Raiders hiring Pete Carroll was a home run hire. But how long can you realistically expect that he's going to be your head coach, right? I look at that as you're getting someone to come in here, change the culture, and build a foundation for what the next coach is going to be able to do. And maybe Nick Saban would be interested in doing something like that. But he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that's going to want to go somewhere and be told what to do or how to run a team. And we know that Jerry Jones loves doing that. So that would be that's certainly an interesting idea that was floated out there by Cam Newton. But the Arch Manning thing, I could totally buy into that. There was one other clip from Cam Newton yesterday on First Take. He had a lot of things to say yesterday. But I thought this was a very interesting discussion. And quite frankly, he gives an answer that I was not expecting. But this is Cam Newton yesterday on First Take, and Stephen A. Smith asking him, would you trade your MVP award for a Super Bowl championship?
We've got a former league MVP right here on the set right now in Cam. I ask you, Cam, if you could give back that league MVP for a Super Bowl championship, would you do it?
Nope.
Oh.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Because you have to ask it through this lens. That was a very journalistic viewpoint or vantage point or response, Stephen A. I'll ask you this question, and, just to pose this thought. What's more important, impact or championships? You look at a guy like Allen Iverson, you stood up on the table and blah, 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 blah. Everybody's not going to be Michael Jordan. Everybody's not going to be Patrick Mahomes. Everybody's not going to be these individuals who have the luxury of saying, hey, I not only dominated this sport, but I also have championships to back it. Like, let me remind you, Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Respectfully, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. So, yes, when you look at those guys and you say, okay, what's more important? Would you have preferred to win a Super Bowl? I think that's the humble approach. But if we're being honest, the impact of you holding yourself accountable to say everybody has a responsibility to do. And you can say as an MVP award winner or an All-American, you've held yourself or you've held your end of the bargain down.
Yeah, an interesting answer there. First off, I will say this. I appreciate Cam being honest. You could tell that was truly what he felt, and I will give him that. I will also say I think that's one of the worst takes I've ever heard. and just incredibly jarring to hear from a guy saying, yeah, no, I'd rather have my MVP over winning that Super Bowl because I did my job.
The argument he lays out, I fully get.
Yes.
Do we remember Charles Barkley or Adam Morrison? Adam Morrison has multiple rings.
It's a fair point.
But we really, really know Barkley, granted, yes, because of his post-NBA career, probably more so. I mean, he hosted SNL. So let's not forget that. He's done that a couple times. But we remember Barkley. We remember Iverson. We remember Dan Marino. We remember those greats that may not have hoisted the trophy, but were still all-time greats and had those caliber seasons. Are we going to ever not remember Lamar Jackson?
No, we will.
And so I get where he's coming from, but to be fair, the whole thing about this team sport is that you hoist the trophy at the end and you do it as a team. Yeah, individual accolades are great, but now also that being said, with him only, having the one, it just feels like, well, I don't want to give up what I have to just be remembered. Oh yeah, I won a title too, because even though it is a team sport, there are some times where some people either aren't pulling their weight or they have bad games in that year or that season, or may even be on the field, but they were on the roster and they get a ring, but they just get remembered as a champion. So I get where he's coming from. So, but I don't know if I fully agree with it.
No. And my thing with that too is again, look, I agree with everything you said. I can understand where he's coming from with that argument. Look, I've never won an MVP award in professional sports. I don't know what that's like. And it probably is great to get those kinds of accolades. And right now that is, his crowning achievement from his NFL career. And he had a great NFL career.
Damian won Employee of the Month. We can ask him when he comes back how that feels. That's close.
That's a good point, Saber. Yeah, we can we'll ask Damian when he comes back. But again, it just comes off like you're saying for a team sport of, okay, well, we didn't win the game, but I don't care because I had a good game. On top of, I understand he had a great year when he won his MVP. he did not play well in that Super Bowl. And you look at it as, okay, you do have this crowning achievement, but you also, come with that of, or from the mindset of, well, I won that award, which means that I was doing my job that year. Maybe my other teammates let me down, but I was doing my job. And you did until you got to the biggest game of the year, and then you didn't do your job and you played poorly and you lost your one chance at the Super Bowl. It's just wild. I don't think I've ever heard a player come out and specifically say, no, I want the individual accolades over the team's success and the glory of winning a championship. So appreciate the honesty. That's just, in my opinion, a wild take, but that is, that's Cam Newton for you. So some interesting comments from the former Auburn Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and national champion quarterback there on First Take yesterday. So when you return here on Morning Jocks, we'll put a bow on things, continue to get you set for a big weekend of SEC hoops. Go to your text, 205-834-9450. Text line is still open. You're listening to Morning Jocks here on Jocks 94.5. 6:33. Welcome back into Morning Jocks here on Jocks 94.5. Wrapping up the Friday edition. McElroy and Kubelik in the morning coming your way here in about 5 minutes. Want to get to some of your text reacting to a big weekend of college hoops as well as the NFL mock drafts. We were talking about Cam Newton making some very pointed comments about wanting his MVP award over winning a Super Bowl, as well as suggesting maybe Nick Saban and Arch Manning to the Dallas Cowboys in 2026. A lot to get into there, but a quick reminder again, Auburn in action tomorrow. You can listen to it here on Jocks at 1 o'clock as they will be traveling to take on Ole Miss. Alabama playing Georgia at 3 o'clock. You're also going to have UAB here at home hosting Charlotte tomorrow there in the lunch hour. So a great day for hoops here around the state of Alabama. But getting to the text line here real quick, we have Lewis who says, are there any Kentucky fans out there who feel, or how do they feel about Rick Pitino being the Kentucky godfather with his message to the fan base? So yeah, if you missed it, Rick Pitino posted a video essentially saying everyone needs to cheer and applaud for Coach Cal when he returns this weekend. I don't know if that's how that's necessarily going to go. Richard from Hoover texting, he says, Cam is off his rocker. Why did they keep giving him a platform? Well, we're talking about it. So I guess they got what they wanted there. Let's see. Thomas says, remember UAB at hosting Charlotte tomorrow at 1 o'clock at Bartow. Would love to see a good crowd to cheer on the Blazers. Absolutely.
Tune in on Jocks 2, 100.5 to catch that as well.
There you go. And somebody else chiming in about Cam Newton says, that sounds bad from a quarterback, but hey, he was honest. Yep. Can't knock him for being honest. Well, that'll do it for me. John Saber, Conrad Van Order. Appreciate you tuning in to Morning Jocks. McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. Those guys are next.